Imagine, right now, you could master a skill that transforms every conversation you have. A skill that dissolves tension and conflicts, builds trust effortlessly, and turns casual chats into powerful connections. What would that do for your relationships, your career, and your ability to achieve your wildest dreams? The answer lies in the focus of this book, communication. You see, communication isn't just about speaking. It's the art of creating understanding. It's the force that turns strangers into allies, and allies into lifelong partnerships. And it starts today with you and me. Let me tell you a story that mirrors so many of our lives. Picture this. Lisa had always trusted her best friend Mark. One evening, he abruptly canceled their coffee date. Lisa, without a word, assumed the worst. He thinks I'm boring, doesn't want to hang out anymore. Days passed without contact. Mark, meanwhile, was convinced she's avoiding me because of that argument last week. What neither of them knew was that Lisa had just received a call about a family emergency, and Mark had been struggling with his own anxiety about reaching out. Do you see the danger here? The silence, the assumptions, the fear of being vulnerable? Without a single clear word exchanged, their bond fractured. But here's the silver lining. When they finally faced each other with humility, Lisa admitting her fear of being a burden, Mark confessing his insecurity, they rebuilt trust stronger than before. That's the power of effective communication. It doesn't just eliminate problems. It builds bridges where silence would leave chasms. Yet how many of us let misunderstandings poison our lives? I've met 1,000 people who say, I'm not great with people, but the truth is communication isn't something you're either born with or without. It's a muscle. You can stretch it, strengthen it, and watch it grow when you commit to the work. Let's name the enemies of clear communication. First, assumptions. We think, they should know what I need, or if they really cared, they'd understand me. But guess what? No one is a mind reader. Assuming we already know what others are thinking is like trying to drive with a fogged-up windshield, dangerous and disorienting. Second, fear. Fear of looking foolish, fear of rejection, fear that our words will fall flat or spark conflict. I've felt this. I've sat in pitch meetings, interviews, even first dates, where my thoughts were racing, but my mouth stayed locked down. That fear, if unchallenged, turns communication into a performance where we hide our truth, and in doing so, sabotage connection. Third, distractions. How many of you have been in conversations where your eyes are on your phone or your mind is already racing ahead? Distractions don't just interrupt dialogue. They say, you don't matter. And that's a message that poisons relationships the second it's sent. But here's the good news. Each of these barriers can be dismantled, and this book is your blueprint. Right now, you and I are standing at the starting line of a journey to unshackle your ability to connect. Think of this chapter as your foundation stone. Why does this matter? Because communication influences everything. Studies show that 84% of employees cite communication as the top factor in workplace satisfaction. In love, it's the glue that holds trust together. In leadership, it's the spark that ignites action. Even in your quietest moments, when you're journaling or thinking, communication shapes how you define your own self-talk. You're not just learning to talk better, you're becoming a stronger leader, a more trusted partner, and a more confident human being. Every page forward, we'll break down the tools that turn uncertainty into clarity. We'll learn to listen with empathy, speak with precision, and navigate conflicts like a pro. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting for others to read your mind. Stop holding back from sharing your truth. Stop letting good enough conversations settle in. If you want to unlock a world where people feel seen, heard, and valued by you and by the people in your life, you need to start right now. Remember, every conversation is a story you're writing. Will you let miscommunication twist the plot? Or will you take control, sharpen your communication skills, and become the author of extraordinary connections? That choice is yours. Let me leave you with this. A few years ago, I spoke to a small business owner who had lost half of his clients in a year. You've probably heard the phrase, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But how often do we actually use them that way? That's the magic of active listening, transforming conversations from monologues into true dialogues. This chapter isn't just about hearing words. It's about engaging so deeply with others that they feel seen, heard, and understood. And trust me, when you master this, you unlock doors to trust, collaboration, and resolution that you never could with words alone. Let me share a story that changed how I think about listening. Years ago, I met a team leader who was struggling with a lack of engagement from his employees. He was a smart guy, full of ideas, but no one wanted to work with him. The problem? He was so focused on being the expert that he didn't realize he'd stopped listening. One day, he decided to change. During a meeting, instead of jumping in with solutions, he asked an employee, "Walk me through how you see this challenge. What's working and what's not?" He leaned forward, made eye contact, and did something revolutionary. He repeated back what she said in his own words. "So what I hear you saying is, the biggest hurdle is the timeline?" She nodded, surprised. "Yes. No one gives us the time to think." He smiled. "Help me understand how we can shift that." What happened next? A breakthrough. His team started contributing ideas they'd never shared before. Productivity rose. Morale improved. And all because he stopped talking and started listening. This is active listening in action. It's not passive. It's not waiting for your turn to speak. It's an act of courage. Courage to sit in the quiet and let someone else's words reshape the conversation. So let's break it down. First, paraphrasing. This means rephrasing the speaker's words in your own voice to confirm understanding. It's not about copying. It's about clarity. If someone says, "I've been overwhelmed with this project," try, "You're feeling swamped with the workload?" Notice how this shows you're paying attention and invites correction if you've missed the mark. Next, summarizing. This is the tool you use at natural pauses, especially in longer conversations. Think of it as a mini recap. So what I'm hearing is that the main issue is miscommunication between departments. Is that right? This helps both sides stay aligned and shows you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're invested in what they're saying. Then there's the art of open-ended questions. These are your superpower for deepening conversations. A closed question, like, "Did you finish the report?" closes the door after a yes or no. An open-ended question, like, "What part of the report gave you the most trouble?" invites exploration. It's how you move from surface-level dialogue to meaningful connection. But here's the truth. Active listening isn't just about techniques. It's about presence. It's about giving someone the space to express themselves fully, even when it's hard. I've seen this in action during conflicts, too. Imagine two colleagues arguing over deadlines. One is frustrated about missed timelines. The other is exhausted. Instead of arguing, the listener paraphrases, "You're worried the delays are impacting clients." The other listens, then says, "You're saying you're stretched thin? Not refusing to meet deadlines?" Suddenly, the conflict shifts. Empathy replaces blame. This chapter isn't just theory. It's a call to action. Think about a time someone really listened to you. Chances are, it felt like oxygen after holding your breath. You'll never overestimate the impact of making someone feel that way. And here's the secret. The more you practice active listening, the more people will gravitate toward you. They'll trust you, they'll open up, they'll lean on you when it matters most. Let's talk about trust. Did you know that 93% of employees are more likely to report high trust in a manager who practices active listening? That number isn't just impressive. It's powerful. Trust is the currency of communication, and active listening is how we mint it. It's how we turn strangers into allies and coworkers into teammates. But it's not just in professional settings. Relationships, romantic, familial, friendships, thrive when we truly listen. So how do you start? Begin small. The next time someone speaks, resist the urge to problem solve immediately. Instead, try paraphrasing once. Ask an open-ended question. You might hear something you've never heard before. Not just words, but feelings. And when you're not sure what to say, it's okay. Silence isn't failure. It's an invitation for the other person to lead. Let's visualize this. Picture yourself in a conversation where your goal isn't to impress, but to understand. You're not waiting for your turn. You're fully present. You see the speaker as someone with a story worth hearing, not a problem to fix. This is the mindset shift that turns good communicators into great ones. Remember, active listening isn't about having the right answers. It's about asking the right questions, showing up fully, and letting others do the same. Every time you listen deeply, you're planting a seed of trust. Over time, those seeds grow into something powerful, a culture of openness, respect, and connection. You've done the work of showing up here, in this moment, in this chapter. Now, take the next step. Choose someone today, not a boss, not someone important, but anyone. A partner, a friend, a colleague. Listen to them as if their words could change your life. Because if they can't, you're not listening enough. When you practice active listening, you're not just improving communication, you're building bridges to people's hearts. And trust me, the world needs more bridge builders. So take a breath, put the techniques into motion, and watch as conversations that once left you exhausted begin to energize you. The power of understanding is yours to claim. Now go listen. Welcome, dear listener, to a journey that will transform how you speak, how you're heard, and how you connect with the world. Today we dive into the third chapter of how to improve communication skills, mastering verbal clarity. This is where your message becomes powerful, where your words cut through the noise of a distracted world, and where your voice is no longer just heard, but understood. Let's begin with a simple truth. Words are tools. In the hands of a craftsman, they build. In the hands of a careless speaker, they crumble what they were meant to build. So our first step is word choice. Ask yourself, are you using the simplest, most precise words to convey your meaning? I remember a client who once told me, I speak clearly enough for people in my field, but when I address a broader audience, I feel like no one gets me. He filled his sentences with jargon, acronyms, and buzzwords that locked people out of his message. Together, we replaced the complexity with clarity. Instead of optimizing operational paradigms, we used making processes smoother and more efficient. The difference? Suddenly, his ideas weren't just understood, they were embraced. This is your challenge. Be a translator, not an encoder. When you speak, ask yourself, is this language unlocking, understanding, or creating a puzzle only I can solve? Choose words that are simple, vivid, and universal. Words like explain, support, or achieve carry weight because they're familiar. They're bridges, not walls. Next, let's turn to tone control. Imagine a musician playing a beautiful melody. But if they play every note at the same volume and pitch, the melody dies. Similarly, if your tone is flat and lifeless, your message drowns. Think of the last time you heard someone speak with energy, enthusiasm, and variation in their voice. Did you tune in? Did you lean closer, even if only mentally? That's the magic of tone. I've seen a dramatic shift in people who practice this. Take a young professional who worked in a corporate environment. She told me, I feel stuck in meetings because my voice sounds nervous. We recorded her speaking and discovered a pattern. Her tone dropped at the end of sentences, making her sound uncertain. We practiced raising her pitch slightly at key points, injecting curiosity into questions, and varying her pace to emphasize urgency or calm. The result? Her colleagues began noticing her, respecting her ideas, inviting her perspective. Here's the secret. Tone is the melody of your message. When you match your tone to your intent, you don't just speak, you persuade. Now, let's tackle sentence structure. Imagine your words as a river. If the river is clogged with too much, it stagnates. But if it flows in purposeful, rhythmic currents, it carries everything forward. Break complex ideas into bite-sized chunks. Use the rule of 3 to make your points memorable. Why 3? Studies show the human brain remembers points in threes. When I coached a founder preparing for a pitch to investors, we took his 5-page explanation of his product and turned it into 3 compelling sentences. We solve X by doing A, B, and C. The investors nodded. They wrote checks. Also, master the power of the lead sentence. The first sentence of your sentence should be the most important word or phrase. Instead of saying, there's a new process we're implementing that will streamline operations, say, we're streamlining operations with a new process. The key verb, streamlining, is front and center. That's clarity. That's leadership. And now, let's pause, metaphorically, to discuss pauses and pacing. I want you to imagine a storyteller in the old style, a fireside performer who, at the moment of suspense, leans back, holds the silence, and lets the audience lean forward. That's you. When you speak, learn to control the rhythm. Slow down when you want to emphasize a point. Speed up to build excitement. Pause when you want to let a statement land, or when you need to collect your thoughts without rambling. A teacher once told me she used silence in her classrooms to great effect. When I finish explaining a concept, I stay quiet for 5 seconds. Usually students start asking questions. But sometimes, I can see the understanding just click in their faces. The silence gives the mind space. That's the power of a pause. It's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of intent. So here's your practice. Next time you speak in a meeting or share an idea, count the pauses. Insert one every 2 or 3 sentences. Let the words breathe. Let the message settle. You'll find that people follow you better, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. Let me leave you with a story that embodies all of these elements. A few years ago, I met a man who'd spent decades in construction. He'd always struggled with leadership because, he said, people didn't take me seriously. When we worked together, I asked him to describe his job in 1 sentence. He looked at me and grunted, "I make sure stuff gets built right." That was the seed of a powerful message. We refined his word choice, replaced stuff with structures, shifted his tone to one of pride and authority, and taught him to structure his speech with purpose. At his next team meeting, he said, "My job is to ensure every structure we build is safe, strong, and done with integrity." The room listened. The room respected him. Clarity doesn't just make you understood, it makes you trusted. My friend, you don't need to speak louder to lead. You need to speak clearer to be heard. Take time to choose your words like a sculptor selects marble, intentionally, with passion. Let your tone dance with the rhythm of your message. Build sentences that carry weight. And remember, silence is not emptiness. It's the beat before the music hits. As you move forward, ask yourself daily, am I being clear for the sake of clarity or clever for the sake of complexity? The world already has too many confusing messages. Be known as someone who simplifies, who elevates, who communicates with the kind of clarity that changes minds, builds trust, and unlocks potential. You now hold the keys to verbal clarity. Use them, practice them. And when you do, your voice will become not just another sound in the symphony of life, but a melody people remember. Imagine walking into a room full of people. Before you utter a single word, your body already speaks volumes. Your posture, your gaze, even the tilt of your shoulders, these signals shape how you're perceived. Nonverbal communication is the unsung hero of human connection. It's the quiet force that can make or break a first impression, strengthen a bond, or turn a negotiation into a breakthrough. And today, we're unlocking its secrets. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered why some people radiate confidence even when they're nervous, or why others seem to command a room the moment they enter? The answer lies in their mastery of nonverbal communication. This is more than just body language. It's about alignment. Every gesture, every facial expression, every shift in posture must harmonize with your words. When they do, you become a beacon of clarity and conviction. Start with eye contact. It's the windows to trust, respect, and connection. But here's the nuance. Eye contact isn't about staring down your audience. It's about balance. Picture this. Imagine a young professional named Alex who was terrified of public speaking. During a critical presentation, he'd look at the floor, his voice cracking under pressure. But when he learned to make gentle, steady eye contact, pausing on one face for 2 seconds before shifting to another, his message suddenly carried weight. His listeners felt seen. His confidence grew. Eye contact isn't about intimidation. It's about invitation. It's your way of saying, what I'm about to share is worth your attention. Now, consider posture. Your spine holds the power of your presence. Slouching whispers, I'm disengaged. Locked arms scream, I'm on guard. But stand tall. Root your feet firmly to the ground. Let your shoulders relax, and let your chest carry a quiet pride, and you become a magnet for momentum. Think of the last time you met someone whose energy seemed contagious. That's the power of posture. Your body isn't just reacting to emotion. It shapes it. When you sit or stand with purpose, you send a signal to your brain. You are capable. You belong here. But let's get even more personal. Facial expressions. They're the mirrors of your soul, or the masks you wear. A trained mind might control what they say, but the eyes and mouth rarely lie. Ever noticed how a forced smile can make someone seem insincere? Or how a furrowed brow can turn a compliment into a critique? Master your expressions by asking yourself one question. Does my face match my message? If you're giving an empathetic response, soften your features. If you're leading with authority, let your jaw anchor with resolve. When your face and your voice are in sync, you become a paragon of authenticity. And here's the crux of this chapter: alignment. When your words say one thing but your body screams another, your message gets buried in confusion. Think of a sales leader who told clients, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing," while fidgeting with their pen, avoiding eye contact, and hunching in their chair. The client left thinking, "I wonder if they're sure." That leader later discovered the cost of misalignment. Once they practiced syncing their body with their voice, their conversion rates doubled. Let me share a story that changed my life. Years ago, I worked with a coach who challenged us to master nonverbal communication in high-stakes moments. One of my clients, a teacher struggling to engage her students, came to her sessions with a textbook example of disarray. She was kind, intelligent, and passionate, but her closed posture, darting eyes, and tight-lipped expressions made her seem distant. She was telling her students to trust her, but showing them the opposite. Through deliberate practice, mirroring, role-playing, and daily feedback, we turned her classroom into a haven of participation. She learned to open her palms to signal receptivity, to lean in while students spoke, and to let her warmth shine through her eyes. The transformation wasn't just in her students' engagement, it was in her own confidence. You see, nonverbal communication isn't just about changing others' perceptions. It's about unlocking your own power. When your body supports your message, you feel the shift in your energy. You feel more grounded, more persuasive, more alive. So how do you begin? Let me give you a challenge. For the next week, practice 3 things. 1. Pause before speaking. Scan your posture. Are your shoulders tense? Your hands clenching? Adjust so your body breathes with you. 2. Notice your expressions. Record yourself explaining a simple concept. Are your eyebrows furrowed when you mean to be encouraging? Practice softening them. 3. Mirror others. In conversations, subtly copy their posture or cadence. It's an instant bond builder. And remember, one of the most important nonverbal signals you can give is awareness. Be relentlessly curious about how your body shows up in every interaction. Celebrate the small wins, like when you catch yourself maintaining eye contact during a difficult conversation. Nonverbal communication isn't a trick, it's a truth. It's the art of letting your entire body become a vessel for your message. When your gestures amplify your voice, your presence becomes undeniable. You don't just speak, you resonate. So, dear friend, as you close this chapter, I leave you with this. Imagine the power you'll hold when your words and your body dance in perfect harmony. You'll no longer be asking people to listen, you'll be inviting them to lean in. And the world will respond, not because of your title or your words alone, but because of the unshakable certainty your nonverbal cues scream to every room you walk into. Let's talk about something that can transform your personal and professional relationships forever. Conflict de-escalation. Conflict is inevitable. It's part of being human. But how you handle it, that's where the magic happens. Because you have the power to turn a fiery argument into a peaceful resolution, and all it takes is a few intentional strategies. Picture this. A team meeting erupts into chaos. 2 colleagues are at each other's throats, voices rising, tempers flaring. If you were in that room, would you panic or take control? The truth is, conflicts like this don't just damage morale. They stall progress, crush creativity, and leave emotional scars. But what if I told you that the key to diffusing tension isn't about winning an argument or proving a point? It's about creating space for understanding. Let me share a real-life example. A few years ago, I consulted with a tech startup where one software developer accused a designer of missing deadlines. The designer fired back, saying the developer never gave clear instructions. Their arguments spiraled into personal attacks. But here's what shifted the dynamic. One of them stepped in and said, I feel frustrated because the unclear specs are making it hard for me to deliver on time. How can we align on priorities? Notice something here? No blame, no defensiveness, just a simple shift to I statements, the cornerstone of de-escalation. That's the power of language. When we stop accusing and start owning our emotions, we invite others to do the same. Think about it. When someone says, "You never listen to me," it triggers a fight-or-flight response in the other person. But when they say, "I feel unheard" when the conversation gets interrupted, it opens the door for curiosity and collaboration. That single word, I, can defuse a bomb. Now, let's talk about something you might have seen in heated debates. People doubling down because they're afraid to seem weak. But here's the secret. True strength isn't about standing your ground. It's about staying neutral. Imagine a mediator in a courtroom. Their power isn't in picking sides, but in holding a mirror so everyone sees their role in the conflict. You can be that voice. How? Start by acknowledging the other person's perspective, even if it's frustrating. Say, "I can see this situation is important to you," or "I understand why you'd feel that way." This doesn't mean you agree. It means you're committed to understanding. It's a small shift that builds trust and lowers defenses. Let me give you another example. A client once told me about a customer service representative who dealt with angry clients by focusing on common ground. When a customer shouted, "Your product is useless," the representative calmly replied, "I'd feel the same if I were in your shoes. Let's find a solution together." Can you see the strategy? Instead of being a target, they became a partner. That's the art of de-escalation. Now, what if the conflict is between you and someone else? Maybe a friend is hurt because you missed a deadline. Instead of making excuses, say, "I regret not meeting your expectations. What can I do to make this right?" Again, no blame, just accountability and a shared goal. Here's what science tells us. When conflicts escalate, the brain's amygdala, a region tied to fear, kicks in. People stop listening, reasoning becomes messy, and emotions take over. To counteract this, you must bring the conversation back to logic. How? Break down the problem step by step. Say, "Let's take a deep breath and focus on what we can solve." Or, "Let's pause and outline the facts here." By refocusing on solutions, you take the argument from the emotional realm into the practical. And here's something else you might not have considered. Your body language during a conflict is just as powerful as your words. If your arms are crossed, your posture screams defensiveness. If you lean forward slightly with an open stance, you signal collaboration. Your face? Keep it neutral. No rolling eyes, no smirking, just steady eye contact and measured gestures. Let's practice a quick mental exercise. The next time you sense a conflict rising, ask yourself, am I focusing on the problem or the person? If it's the latter, pivot. Say, "Let's focus on this issue, not each other." That line alone can stop a conversation from spinning out of control. Now, I'll be real with you. This isn't easy. Habits are hard to break. For decades, we've been taught to debate, win, and protect our egos in arguments. But what if you rewired that belief? What if, instead of winning, you aimed for resetting? Conflict de-escalation isn't about surrendering your values. It's about elevating the conversation so everyone walks away respected. Remember the startup I mentioned earlier? By the end of that meeting, the developer and designer didn't just resolve their project issues. They developed a system for sharing feedback weekly. Because when you master de-escalation, you don't just solve one problem. You prevent 100 more. So here's your challenge. The next time you're in a tense situation, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what's the I statement I can use? And what common ground do we already share? Then, take one small step toward neutrality. You might just save a relationship, a project, or even a team's morale. You see, effective communication isn't just about speaking clearly or listening actively. It's about being present, even when the heat is on. And when you choose de-escalation over escalation, you're not just avoiding a disaster. You're creating the conditions for something bigger: growth, trust, connection. So go out there and practice this. Every time you de-escalate a conflict, you're proving that communication isn't just a skill, it's a superpower. And yes, it takes work. But isn't it worth it to build a world where people talk through their problems, not around them? Keep learning, keep practicing. And remember, The greatest conversations are the ones that help people feel seen, not defeated. You've got this. Welcome to Chapter 6, The Art of Powerful Storytelling. This is where we unlock one of the most transformative tools in your communication arsenal: stories. Stories don't just inform, they inspire. They turn data into meaning, concepts into memories, and ideas into action. Whether you're pitching an idea, giving feedback, or simply sharing experiences with a friend, storytelling is the bridge that connects you to others in a way nothing else can. Let me start with a story you'll probably remember. Imagine you're sitting in a lecture hall, bored out of your mind, as someone drones on about statistics. The numbers blur together, and you're fighting off sleep. Now imagine this. The speaker begins with, quote, "There was a student who failed every math test in high school. One day, her teacher handed her a single word problem and said, 'This isn't about math. It's about how you see yourself.' Suddenly, you're not sleeping. You're listening. Why? Because stories tap into our humanity. They create a roadmap for change, a safe space for the listener to explore, and the emotional anchor that makes ideas stick. Here's the truth. People don't remember your PowerPoint. They remember the story. A story makes you relatable. A story makes your message enduring. Let's talk about structure. Great stories don't just happen. They're built with purpose. Think of the classic 3-act framework: setup, struggle, and resolution. Start by setting the stage. Who is the protagonist? What do they want? Then introduce conflict or a challenge. Did they fail? Succeed? What did they learn? Finally, the resolution. How did it all turn out? This is the arc of a story that keeps people hooked. But here's where it gets magical. You don't have to be a writer to master this. Every interaction involves a story. Take a moment to notice the stories others use in your life. A manager might tell a tale of the team's first failure to show how they learned to win together. A friend might recount a recent adventure to cheer you up. These stories work because they're intentional. And once you apply this structure to your communication, you'll notice how much stronger your messages become. Let me share a real-life example. A few years ago, I worked with a nonprofit team struggling to raise funds for a community garden. When I asked the lead organizer how to explain their mission, she said, "We want to grow fresh food for families who can't afford it." It was true, but bland. I asked her to retell her story, using the 3-act method. She paused, then said, "Meet Maria. She was working 2 jobs and couldn't feed her kids. One day, she came to our old warehouse. We had a tiny plot of land. We all grew together, planting, learning, laughing. Now, this garden feeds over 100 families, and Maria became the team's head grower. Her donors didn't just give money, they gave heart. That's the power of a story." But structure alone isn't enough. At the core of storytelling is emotional engagement. People don't buy into ideas, they buy into feelings. Ask yourself, what emotion do you want your listener to feel? Curiosity? Hope? Empathy? Let's say you're leading a team through a difficult transition. You could list all the reasons change is necessary, or you could share a story of resilience from your own career. Let's say you were faced with a similar challenge, how you doubted yourself, then found a way forward. That's not just a story, it's a lifeline for your team to follow. Anecdotes are your secret weapon here. They're personal, they're relatable, and they turn abstract ideas into lived experiences. For instance, if you're asking someone to trust you, don't just say, "I'll always be there for you." Share a time when you showed up for someone in a moment of need. If you're teaching resilience, don't just define it. Describe a time you failed and what you learned. Anecdotes build trust. They humanize you. Now, let's get practical. Here's a quick exercise to help you craft your own stories. Next time you need to make a point, ask yourself, what story do I have that illustrates this idea? How does it begin? What's the challenge? What's the resolution? For example, if you're trying to explain the value of patience, think of a time when you rushed to fix a problem, only to complicate it. Describe the frustration, the pause you took, and the better outcome that came from slowing down. This is your story. Practice telling it out loud, adding emotional tone, maybe even a bit of humor if it fits. Another pro tip, use what I call the anchor question. When presenting a story, end it with a question that invites reflection. What would you have done in their place? Or, how does this make you feel? This creates dialogue and deepens the impact. Let me drive this home with another example. A few years ago, I met a teacher named Alex who was struggling to get his students engaged in history. He was explaining the Great Depression, and the kid's eyes were glazed over. One day he brought in his grandfather's photo album, black and white pictures of a young man standing outside a shantytown. He described the fear and hope in that man's eyes, how he scraped together food for his family, and how he eventually built that same. Imagine a moment in your life when a single question changed everything. You might recall a time when someone asked you, "What's your biggest fear?" or "What would you do if money were no object?" These questions don't just extract information, they unlock hidden truths. Questions are keys we hold in our hands, ready to open doors to understanding, connection, and innovation. Today, we're diving into the art of asking the right questions, a skill that transforms ordinary conversations into extraordinary ones. Let's start by clearing a fundamental truth. Not all questions are created equal. Close your eyes and think about the last time someone bombarded you with yes or no questions. Did you finish the report? Are you coming today? These are closed-ended questions. They're useful for simple confirmations, but they're like flickering light bulbs. They illuminate just enough to move forward but leave the room shrouded in shadows. On the other hand, open-ended questions are roaring fires of curiosity. They begin with how, why, what, and they demand more than a nod or a shake. How did you approach that challenge? What inspired your decision? These questions invite people to step into their world, and in doing so, they invite you into theirs. Let me tell you a story you might find familiar. A team leader noticed one of their direct reports had been quiet in meetings. Concerned, the leader asked, "Are you struggling with the project?" The response was a simple nod. Frustrated, the leader offered to fix it themselves. But the outcome? A missed opportunity. The real issue wasn't the project. It was a personal conflict. If the leader had asked, "How are you feeling about the work lately?" or "What's on your mind?" the conversation would have flowed like a river, revealing the depths beneath the surface. This is the magic of open-ended questions. They build bridges where walls once stood. Now, master this technique. When you want to deepen a conversation, pause slightly before speaking. Yes, silence is powerful. Then, ask a question that demands more than a label. Instead of "Are you happy with your role?" try, "What aspects of your role do you find most rewarding?" Notice how the second question paints a richer picture. But here's the catch. Effective questioning isn't just about flipping a switch. It's about reading the room, adapting, and following threads. Picture yourself at a dinner party. Someone mentions they've traveled extensively. Instead of asking, "Did you enjoy your trip to Japan?" ask, "What was the most unforgettable experience during your time in Japan?" Their answer will likely spill into stories of temples, food, or a local guide who shaped their perspective. Each tale gives you new material. Tell me about the food you had there. What made that guide so special? This is the rhythm of meaningful dialogue, where curiosity fuels connection. Let's talk about the second technique, asking thoughtful follow-ups. You see, many people stop at the first answer, but the best communicators listen for clues. A hesitation, a pause, a mention of something casual, and use those as springboards. Suppose a colleague says, "The deadline was stressful, but I managed." A surface-level response. A skilled communicator might ask, "What strategies helped you stay on track during the stress?" That question turns a brief exchange into a mentorship moment. Now, what if someone avoids answering or replies guardedly? Don't pry. Shift your tone. Ask, "Is there something about this topic that makes it hard to discuss?" Or, "How should I approach this differently?" This isn't about interrogation. It's about respect and partnership. The goal isn't to extract answers, but to create a safe space where clarity can unfold. Think of the world's most inspiring leaders, scientists, or innovators. What do they share? An insatiable curiosity. Albert Einstein asked, "What would happen if I chased a beam of light?" That question birthed the theory of relativity. In your life, asking the right questions can spark solutions, strengthen relationships, and ignite passion in others. Here's your challenge. For the next week, lead with questions. Ask them in interviews, conversations with friends, even in moments of disagreement. Ask to understand, not to interrogate. When you find yourself forming a closed-ended question, rewrite it into an open one. This isn't just a skill, it's a mindset shift. Remember, asking questions isn't a sign of weakness. It's a declaration that you value people's stories. And when you value someone's story, they will begin to value yours. So let's not just passively listen to the words people say. Let's listen for the deeper answers hidden beneath them, waiting for the right question to set them free. You now possess the power to reshape conversations, relationships, and outcomes. The next time someone speaks, don't just respond. Don't even just listen. Ask. And watch how the world begins to open up, one question at a time. Feedback is one of those things in life that can either make you or break you. It's the fuel that powers growth, the mirror that reflects blind spots, and the bridge that turns good communicators into great ones. But here's the truth. Feedback is only as powerful as how we choose to give and receive it. Today, we're diving deep into the art of feedback, how to deliver it with grace, how to accept it without defensiveness, and how to transform it into a catalyst for your evolution. Let me share a story that changed my perspective forever. There was a young professional I'll call Jaden. Jaden was talented, driven, and passionate, but in team meetings, he often shut down when his ideas were challenged. One day, his supervisor pulled him aside and said, "Jaden, your ideas are brilliant, but your ability to listen to feedback is holding you back." Now, this could have been crushing. But Jaden didn't react with anger or excuses. He leaned in. He asked, "What exactly am I doing that's blocking progress? And how can I improve?" That humility, his willingness to turn feedback into fuel, transformed him into a leader. Years later, he told me, receiving feedback wasn't about being wrong. It was about becoming right. That's the power of mindset. Feedback isn't a weapon. It's a gift. But how do we give it in a way that inspires, not intimidates? Let's start with the science of constructive criticism. Studies show that effective feedback is specific, actionable, and delivered with empathy. Here's a framework I call the SBI method: situation, behavior, impact. Let's break it down. Suppose you need to tell a team member their presentations often run over time. Instead of saying, "You're always late," which feels like an attack, you say, "Situation, last week during the project kickoff, the meeting ran 20 minutes past the scheduled time." Behavior, you spent extra time going over slides 12 to 15. Impact, this made it hard for the rest of us to get to our next task on time. Could we collaborate on how to condense that section? Notice how this creates clarity, avoids blame, and focuses on solutions. You're not pointing fingers, you're building bridges. And here's the secret. When we give feedback with the goal of helping someone grow, we strengthen trust. When we give it out of frustration or to control, we erode relationships. Always ask yourself, is this feedback serving their growth or mine? Great communicators choose the former. Now let's talk about the harder part, receiving feedback without bristling. I've seen smart, accomplished people crumble when confronted with even well-meaning suggestions. Why? Because they confuse feedback with judgment. It's not. Feedback is simply data. Imagine someone saying, "Your report needs more data. Let's add more research." That's not about you. It's about the report. Treat feedback like a compass, not a criticism. Here's a simple mental shift. When someone gives you feedback, say to yourself, "This is me getting updated to my best version." If they suggest you came across as impatient in a recent meeting, don't immediately defend. Instead, ask, "What specific moments did you notice where that came through?" Then say, "What can I do differently next time?" This curiosity disarms defensiveness and turns feedback into a collaboration. One of my mentors once told me, if you're not getting feedback, you're flying blind. If you're giving feedback and they don't ask for it, you're not giving it correctly. This wisdom sticks with me. Feedback must be invited. In relationships, ask, "Would you be open to giving me feedback on how to improve our communication?" At work, add, "How do I show up in team meetings? What can I do to contribute better?" When people see you as someone who genuinely wants to grow, they'll open up. Let's unpack the emotional process of receiving feedback. Here's a technique I call the BLAST method. Breathe. Pause before reacting. Take 3 deep breaths. Your body tenses when you feel attacked. Breathe to reset. Listen. Hear the entire message without interrupting. Your role now is to absorb, not debate. Ask. Clarify if you're confused. Are you saying my tone was harsh or my volume? Don't assume. Summarize. Repeat back what you heard. So, what I hear you saying is, this proves you're engaged. Thank. Show gratitude, even if the words sting. I appreciate your honesty. Let's talk about how I can improve. This process isn't just polite, it's powerful. I remember a time when a colleague told me my public speaking habit of whispering felt patronizing. I felt my ego rise, but I used the BLAST method. By the end of the conversation, we drafted a plan to make my delivery more energetic. That moment became a cornerstone of my speaking career. Here's the ultimate truth. People want to see you succeed. Feedback often comes from a place of care, even if it's clumsily delivered. If someone says something harshly, let that guide how you respond, not what you do next. Focus on the message, not the messenger. But wait, what if the feedback is unfair or wrong? Even then, it's a learning opportunity. Unfair feedback teaches us to advocate for ourselves. Say, I appreciate your perspective. Let me share my side. And calmly explain why their feedback might not align with the facts. Then say, how can we move forward together? And here's a final challenge. Feedback isn't just words, it's action. The moment you say, I'll work on that, you must follow through. Track your progress. Ask for updates. Show you're serious about growth. My friends, feedback is the soul of communication. It's the thread that weaves empathy, clarity, and trust into every relationship. So here's your mission. From today, be a giver of fearless feedback and a receiver of fearless growth. Maya Angelou once said, criticism is inevitable. The best way to deal with it is to be better. Let that be your mantra. You are not defined by perfection. You are defined by your willingness to learn, adapt, and become. Now go out there and turn feedback into flight. The world needs your voice, polished, purposeful, and passionately evolving. Welcome to Chapter 9, Building Emotional Intelligence. You see, if communication is the bridge between misunderstanding and connection, emotional intelligence is the foundation that holds it all together. It's the invisible force that transforms how we relate to one another, how we navigate friction, and how we turn interactions from transactional to transformational. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of what makes human connection thrive, not just in our careers, but in our lived experiences. Let me start with a story that mirrors so many of our lives. Imagine a manager named Alex who prides himself on being results-driven, but often leaves his team feeling demoralized. One day, one of his employees, after months of tension, finally says, "Alex, I don't feel heard." That single sentence stopped him in his tracks. He had always believed fairness and logic were enough, but it wasn't until he asked himself a painful question, what might I be missing here beyond the facts, that he began to shift. You see, emotional intelligence doesn't just ask, what is happening? It dares to ask, what does it mean? And that's where the magic begins. The first pillar of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. It's the ability to pause and ask yourself, how am I showing up in this moment? Think about the last time you walked into a conversation already wound up. Maybe your body was tight, your voice was short. You didn't hear the words "not listening," but the person across from you left feeling dismissed. Self-awareness is your superpower here. It's the internal GPS that says, wait, your heart is racing, but this person isn't threatening you. You're reacting, not responding. Here's a powerful tool, the 3-second rule. Before speaking in a high-stakes moment, take 3 seconds to check in with yourself. What's my body doing? What's my breath doing? Am I coming from curiosity or defensiveness? This tiny pause creates space to choose how you want to show up. Let me tell you, this small practice has the audacity to rewire your instincts. The second pillar is managing your emotions. Let's be honest. None of us are immune to emotional hijackings, but emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering the distance between the trigger and your reaction. A great example is a teacher who noticed her frustration rising during a heated classroom debate. Instead of shutting down the students, she said, "I need a moment to collect myself. Let's take a 2-minute stretch break. We're not done, but we'll finish stronger." That was her way of honoring her own emotions without letting them control the room. Her students even gave her a standing ovation afterward. Now, let's talk about empathy, the art of truly seeing another person's world. This is where emotional intelligence becomes alchemy. You've probably met someone who listens so deeply that you feel seen after just 5 minutes. That's not luck. It's practice. Try this. When someone shares an emotion, don't rush to fix it or dissect it. Just say, "Help me understand how that felt for you." Then listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire body. Studies show that mirroring someone's posture and reflecting their emotions by saying, "You sound frustrated," or "That must have felt vulnerable," activates their prefrontal cortex. Suddenly, they're calm enough to hear what you have to say. Here's a real-life revelation I received. Emotional intelligence isn't just about managing yourself. It's about adapting how you reach others. Think of it like wearing different filters to adjust your message to their needs. If a colleague is logical and data-driven, speak in facts. If a friend is relationship-oriented, lead with shared values. This flexibility is why some people seem to effortlessly click with everyone they meet. They don't force others to fit into their mold. They meet them in their truth. Let me share a tool that changed my life: the emotional weather map. At the start of every important conversation, ask yourself 2 questions. Where is the other person emotionally? And where do they need to be emotionally to accept what I'm about to say? For instance, if you need to give feedback to someone who's already stressed, frame it around relief. "Hey, I'd love to share a perspective that might help you feel less overwhelmed," instead of "You did this wrong." Watch how that shifts everything. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: conflict. Emotional intelligence doesn't avoid disagreement, it transforms it. I once witnessed a couple at a family dinner spiral into an argument. One person said, "You always dismiss me," and the other replied, "You make me defensive whenever you bring this up." But then, one of them did something radical. She said, "Let me try this again, but first I need to know what you're feeling right now." By stepping back into emotional clarity, they turned a fight into a connection. That's the power of emotional intelligence, turning us versus them into how do we build a way through this together. Finally, let me ask you, who in your life could thrive with 10% more emotional intelligence from you? It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming responsive. It's showing up in a way that makes others feel safe, even when things get messy. Every time you pause to reflect, choose empathy over efficiency, or communicate in a way that lifts another person. That is emotional intelligence in action. So today, let's commit to one small act. The next time you feel your emotions surge, pause, take 3 seconds. Ask yourself what your body is trying to tell you. Then, respond. Not from ego, but from intention. You'll find that when you lead with emotional clarity, your communication doesn't just improve. It becomes a doorway to deeper connections, trust, and impact. Go. Build that bridge. Chapter 10. Cultural Communication Awareness. Imagine standing in the heart of a bustling global conference, surrounded by voices in a dozen languages, each carrying the weight of centuries-old traditions and beliefs. This is the world we live in, a mosaic of cultures, where the way we communicate can either bridge divides or create them. Today we're stepping into the final frontier of communication, cultural awareness. This isn't just about politeness or ticking boxes on a diversity checklist. It's about unlocking the potential to connect, collaborate, and lead with authenticity in a world that thrives on differences. Let me share a story that changed the way I think about this. A few years ago, a team of engineers from Germany and Brazil were tasked with designing a sustainable energy project in partnership. The German team, known for their directness and structured problem-solving, scheduled a series of meetings to outline goals and deadlines. The Brazilian team, valuing relationship building and flexibility, arrived at the first meeting relaxed, chatting about family and the weekend soccer match. The Germans, concerned about time, grew impatient. The Brazilians, seeing the Germans' rigidity, began to question their willingness to engage. Misunderstanding threatened to derail the project. But then an insightful team leader stepped in. She paused the discussions and asked both sides to explain their norms. The Germans shared how they saw time as a resource to be respected and used efficiently, a mindset rooted in their history of post-war productivity. The Brazilians explained how their culture prioritized trust and human connection, which they believed laid the groundwork for meaningful collaboration. By understanding each other's lenses, they adapted. The Germans allowed more time for informal conversations, and the Brazilians followed structured agendas for technical discussions. The result? A groundbreaking project that won international acclaim. This is the power of cultural communication awareness. It's not about erasing differences, but embracing them as tools for deeper connection. Let's explore how. First, recognize that communication styles vary across cultures. In some parts of the world, like the United States or Germany, communication tends to be direct and explicit. Think of a manager who states, "Your report is late, and it's affecting the timeline." In other cultures, such as in Japan or Sweden, people often favor indirect communication, relying on context and unspoken cues. The same message might be delivered with phrases like, "The timeline is tight, so let's ensure all reports arrive smoothly." Neither style is better. Each is a product of cultural values. The key lies in identifying these patterns and adjusting your approach. Next, let's talk about stereotypes. They're dangerous because they oversimplify and generalize, turning entire populations into caricatures. You've likely heard phrases like, "People from that region always do X," or "In that country, you can't expect punctuality." These assumptions not only dehumanize, but also blind us to the rich diversity within every culture. I once met a Japanese consultant who explained, "I'm often told my countrymen are reserved, but I'm passionate and opinionated, yet I honor the cultural context in which I work." The truth is, cultures are not monoliths. They are living, breathing ecosystems of individuals. To avoid falling into this trap, replace stereotypes with curiosity. Ask questions like, "What communication styles feel most respectful to you?" Or, "How can I better understand your perspective?" This shifts the conversation from judgment to learning. Now let's address language adaptation. Words carry cultural weight. An idiom that inspires in one region might confuse or offend in another. For example, saying "let's burn the midnight oil" to a South Korean colleague could unintentionally evoke memories of overwork controversies in their country. Or using the phrase "break a leg" in some Middle Eastern cultures might seem ominous, as breaking anything is considered unlucky. The solution? Simplicity and clarity. Avoid jargon or colloquialisms unless you're certain they translate well. And when in doubt, say, "Let me rephrase that," rather than risk misunderstanding. But cultural communication isn't just about avoiding missteps. It's about creating opportunities. Let's apply all the skills we've built in this book. Active listening becomes even more critical when you're navigating cultural nuances. When a colleague gestures differently than you expect, or a client pauses longer before responding, listen beyond the words. Observe their body language, tone, and context. Use emotional intelligence to manage your own reactions. Maybe a delay in response doesn't indicate disinterest, but rather a desire for thoughtful consideration. And let's not forget storytelling. In many African and indigenous cultures, stories are vessels of wisdom and connection. If you're working with teams from these backgrounds, weave storytelling into your communication. Share a parable to explain a complex idea, or use narratives to build trust. You'll find it's not just persuasive, it's transformative. Finally, here are your actionable steps to apply this chapter. First, research cultural norms before engaging with new audiences. Tools like books, documentaries, or even virtual cultural exchange programs can broaden your understanding. Second, observe and adapt in real time. If a client from Mexico values warm greetings and small talk, allow that space before diving into business. If a client from Finland prefers brevity, respect their need to stay on topic. Third, practice humility. Admit when you don't know something and ask for guidance. And fourth, reflect on your own cultural biases. Every one of us carries a unique lens. Acknowledging it is the first step to expanding it. Here's the truth. Cultural communication awareness isn't optional. In a world where a single email misinterpretation can fracture months of collaboration, where a well-meaning joke can create offense, the stakes are too high to ignore. Yet it's also one of the most empowering skills you can master. It allows you to walk into any room, even a virtual one, with confidence, knowing you're equipped to connect on a human level. So dare to step beyond your comfort zone. Embrace the messiness of learning. Celebrate the moments when you get